On this episode of The Open Road, we're taking a look at the Hval H9, which is made by Great Wall, it's owned by Great Wall, under a new name for a new feel. This is their premium luxury SUV range. And at $39,000, and given the amount of features that this car's got, that's quite impressive. Now firstly, looking at the car, it looks the part. The thing that I found with this car is if you put it next to something like a Kia Sportage, it looks like $1 million. You put it next to an AMG ML, and it looks like trash. It's got an interesting dynamic with that. And it really is down to how much you know about cars, because if someone can look at a car and say that's worth X amount of money, that's a little bit tricky with this car, but I think the more astute of us will realise that there's something amiss. Now when I say this car is feature packed, I really do mean it. Between the parking sensors, the parking rear view camera, the lane departure warning system, the blind spot lighting, all of these sorts of things, all adds up. And it's even got heated and cooling and massaging front seats. It is impressive. Not all of the things work as you might expect, however. With example, the lane departure warning, some cars will actually intervene and start to drift you back into your lane. This doesn't do that, it just gives you a warning on the dash. That's the kind of places where they've saved money to be able to offer this car at such a low price. I'm not hugely sold on the styling of this. For example, those vents on the bonnet there, completely useless. But they look like they're worth money, and that's what they've tried to do with this car. They've kind of dressed it up like, it almost reminds me of those kids at school that had all the cool clothes, all the cool labels, because their mum wanted them to fit in with the cool kids, but they weren't really cool, but they had all the gear. That's kind of what this car makes me think of. Let's take a closer look. These headlights, for example, these headlights are really good and they work really well at night, and they turn with the steering wheel, things like that. Very, very impressive. But then they put it next to this grille, which at the right angle you can just see straight through to the radiator. You can see sort of where they've saved some money. Even the spotlights are good, and you've got so many parking sensors around here. Let's have a look inside. Inside the cabin is again a nice place to be. The surfaces are nice, mostly. There's lots of buttons and they all seem to be really nice. It does make it a bit difficult to see where they've saved the money on the design of this car. It does have the flappy pedals on the steering wheel. Personally, I think they're completely pointless, but we'll get to driving this thing shortly. Overall, the interior does seem nice, and it seems like it's more than it's what you're paying for. I like how they've put physical buttons for everything, but you can also access it through the infotainment system on the touchscreen. And the touchscreen works, and it's pretty responsive. I mean, it's not iPad responsive, but it's pretty good for an infotainment system. The only thing I would say is it looks a little bit dated already. Actually, by a little, I mean a lot. It feels like they could have spent a little bit of money on design on that, but it works. It works fine. But the thing that I learned is that last year they made nearly 1 million of this car. So when you get into those kind of numbers, you can buy in bulk and save a lot of money. Because if you're going to go buy one head unit from a radio shop, it might cost you $400. If you're buying 1 million of them, you might get them for $50 a pop. And that's kind of where they've gone with this car, which is still very impressive. Even the sound system, it's a brand sound system. And it's good. It sounds really good. We've got a full glass roof with like panels and everything that work, and it's electronic and it's automated. Even the back seats are impressive. They've molded the back seats to be comfortable, and I fit in them and I feel comfortable in the back of this. All of these things add up to being a very impressive and intriguing package. Unfortunately, the place where you really notice this car falls down is when you drive it. As I said, the block is an Audi design. I don't know where that relationship comes in, if at all, or if they just went on the internet and downloaded the information. I don't know. But it's a 2-litre Audi style block, and then they've put all their own bits on it. And for a 2-litre it's not bad, but given that this vehicle is significantly larger than my VX Land Cruiser, it's a lot of vehicle to move around. And little things like they've made the bonnet really light. I don't know what it's made of, but it's so light that it rattles at high speed, and you can hear it in the cabin. There are a few little rattles and bits and pieces like that in this vehicle. I almost think that they could have made this a more intriguing package by not putting the Hval name everywhere. Like there's a big one on the front, there's a big one on the steering wheel. I feel like a lot of people could be tricked into thinking that this car is cooler than it is by not putting the brand everywhere. And I think that that's going to be an interesting thing with the market for this car, is that a lot of people are going to look at it, and particularly your Remy Wera housewives, they're going to say, wow, that's so much car, you know, it looks so great and it's got all these buttons and features. And then the husband's going to turn around and say, yeah, but it's only a 2-litre. As I said, this car is feature rich. It's got parking sensors, we can do the traction control off here, hill descent, lane departure warning system, the automatic turning off of the engine when you're stopping at the lights, blind spot control. And the thing that I like about all of these buttons is that by default they are turned off, so you don't get all the warning lights and stuff come up when you're driving around normally because of an overbearing electronic system. I appreciate that a lot. Unfortunately, that goes the other way for the interior cabin lighting. By default, the interior lighting at night comes on, and it's a little bit on the tacky side. It's kind of cool at first as a gimmick, but I got over it really quick and just keep turning it off every time I start the car. But the unfortunate side is that the dashboard lighting at night, when you turn the car on, turn the lights on, the lighting goes to its default status, which is ridiculously bright. So I end up, every time I was driving this at night, having to turn it down. Little things like that, a give and take, because I don't have to turn off all of the stupid aids before I do that. So all important, how does it drive? Well, the thing is if you're going to drive this car from Remy Wera to Parnell to the supermarket to the football ground to the netball court and back home again, you're not going to realize how poor the handling characteristics are on this car. For example, I'm on the back road now heading up to Wellsford because it's close and I was time constrained to make this film. And you really notice how much this car wallows around, and it's, I mean, we're doing 100k in a dead straight line, you can wobble a wheel and the whole car just flobbers around. That's not something I would be willing to live with. But if you're only ever getting up to 50k going around the suburbs, who cares, right? The only thing I would say in that respect is if you're having to do an emergency brake, particularly on a bend, if there's a kid running out, that's going to be a thing. I would say that this would do pretty poorly in a moose test, and I'd actually be curious to see if they've done that yet. But if we take the handling out of it, the cabin, as I said, is a nice place to be. It's just not that great to drive. And it's not really bad, like it doesn't scare me to drive it, but it's just not that good. But you're paying 20 grand less than anything in the competition, at least. So is that a compromise that you're willing to save 20 grand on? If you're not going to be doing long distance driving, don't worry about it, I reckon. But the thing is that this is New Zealand. We're Kiwis. We like to get around. We like to go down to the mountain for a weekend. We like to drive down to Wellington for a concert. You know, stuff like that. We do it all the time. Kiwis are all about their cars. And this hasn't been tuned from where it came in from China. Like, this is exactly how they feel if in China. Like Holden, for example, can spend like 3 years retuning the suspension on the new Commodore just to make it good for Australia and New Zealand roads. These guys haven't done that. And if they had, it probably would have cost them a lot of money, and then this thing would probably be an extra 10 or even 20 grand on top, but it would drive better. But if you don't care about that because you're not the kind of person that gets anywhere remotely close to the limits of the driving abilities of this car, do you care? Maybe not. I would care, and I wouldn't buy one based on that alone because I don't like it to drive. But if you don't care, then this is actually a pretty decent package. As I said, if you're only driving around suburbia and you want to have a great stereo system and a car that looks the part and makes you feel like $1 million inside, this is actually a pretty reasonable option. One of the biggest things that's going to come up in the comments, and I know this because it already came up when I posted it on one of our social pages when I first picked this car up a couple of days ago, is going to be, yeah, but it's made in China, what's the reliability like? Well, this car's only been on sale in this country for like 2 days, so we don't really have that data yet. The only way we're really going to know is how well they survive in New Zealand 12 months from now. And I would actually curious to see that data, because if these aren't as bad as some of the naysayers are saying they are, that's, again, very, very impressive. But the other thing you got to remember is half the parts on this car are third party. They've bought a lot of the things, like the headlights and the gearbox and stuff like that, are from reputable brands. But hey, we're on the internet, you know, people are going to say what they're going to say, and they're going to downvote this video if they think this car's crappy just because it's made in China. That's fine. I personally would like to find out for sure, because that's what I do. I'm a half-assed motoring journalist. Being in New Zealand roads, if you're driving any kind of distance in this sort of thing, I don't think you're going to have a good time. I'm not having a good time driving it on this road now. But having driven it around the burbs and all that sort of jazz, it's been fine. But you do have to realize that getting so much at that kind of a price, there are going to be some compromises. But like I said, the exterior, take it as you will. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's not bad. The interior is actually really good. It's really comfy. And like I said, it looks nice. You can see for yourself. Infotainment system, bit meh, but overall, until you drive it, you look at it and you look at this thing and you sit in it and you touch it and you think, 40 grand, I'm getting a deal. And I think overall, depending on what you're planning on using it for, you are getting a good deal. Would I buy one? Absolutely not. I would never buy this car. I would rather get, I don't know, I guess I'm the kind of person that would rather buy something higher quality and have a higher quality experience. But that's just me. What's going to be interesting is going to be the comment section in this video on YouTube, because the thing that I find is that, you know, it's very easy to say, hey, this is a Chinese car, write it off as being rubbish. Well, that's actually really unfair, and we haven't got enough research to say that about this car in this country yet. 12 months from now, when they've been selling for a year, then we can turn around and go, okay, we now know that this is where things tend to go wrong. And we don't know what those are yet, of course, there's no point speculating. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. A little bit run and gun just because I've been super pressed for time. But yeah, let us know what you think in the comments below. Of course, if you've got any questions, we can answer those, either if you're watching on the social media or if you're watching on the YouTubes. By all means, let's get that conversation going. Plenty of things that you probably got questions about that I haven't managed to cover in this video because I didn't want to make a 45-minute video. But yeah, until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you out there on the open road. Cheers.